Ladies and gentlemen, I have a complaint. Yes, this is how we are going to open the Football Talk with Hawk podcast. Welcome. Thank you for listening, whether you are on Spotify or on YouTube. If you're on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the like button if you would please. Thank you so much for stopping by today. And we're going to open with a complaint. I normally don't like opening on such a negative note, but I have a complaint. Fantasy football is a lot of fun. And for those of you who are getting ready to exit off of this episode, just bear with me for a little bit, okay? Remember, this podcast is set up to look through the prism in 4 different lights: through the owners, business, through the coach, GM with the team, through the players individually, and then through the prism of the fans. And I want to look through that prism for a second. Fantasy football has changed over the years. I remember my first fantasy football league. My dad worked for the FAA, and it was a group of air traffic controllers and guys from the center. And my dad signed up to play in the league, and it wasn't my dad playing, it was me. It was 8-year-old me. Now, at this time, I have a lot less knowledge than I have now, granted. But as an 8-year-old, I had nothing but time to study all of the fantasy football magazines. Barnes & Nobles is a great place for a child like me to be able to go read up on all the projections, all the fantasy stats, everything about them. I collected trading cards, so I would go through and look at all the yearly stats in the past of different players. I had all the individual depth charts of each team printed out in a binder that my mom made for me. I studied even at 8 years old. And that year, I made the playoffs. They weren't happy about it because they were wondering how I did. But I made the playoffs. And on top of that, I got 4th at 8 years old. Now, fast forward 25 years. I still have the ability to study, still have the ability to look at all the depth charts. I don't have binders and binders filled with them any longer. But I also have a deeper appreciation for football. So there are 2 types of fantasy football players. There are your diehards that are football fans. And then there's your fanatics who legitimately play fantasy football. I am a diehard fan. I love football. And the way the leagues have changed. Years back, keeper leagues came into effect. Keeper leagues where you could protect 5 players a year. But everybody else would go back into the draft pool, and everybody would draft from that pool of players again, but you got to protect 5. You got to keep 5. And then the best thing happened. Dynasty football came in. Dynasty League fantasy football. What is that, you may ask? Well, that is where you're the GM. You have draft picks to trade. Every year there's a draft, a rookie/supplemental draft. But you don't lose anybody. You build your team the way you want to build your team. You set your team up the way you want to set your team up. And it is a whole different experience. Now, for those of you who are wondering what does this have to do with what my complaint is, here's my complaint. This weekend there were victims of a high crime. And Brandon Staley should pay us all of us, because the Las Vegas Raider defense had 40 fantasy points. 40 fantasy points. For those of you who are wondering, that's a lot. The average is between 10 and 17. Quadruple the 10, over double the 17. A backbreaker of a week for your opponent. Well, my opponent had them and played them, and I got knocked out in the first round of the fantasy football playoffs. And I am very upset about it. And yes, I am actually upset. It does irk me a little bit that the Chargers are that bad, that Brandon Staley was that inept, that the team threw the game that hard. Like, I really hope that other coaches understand how much the players decided to embarrass him on Thursday Night Football. But all that aside, this is why I love football. And this is why being a football fan is so much fun. Here's what fantasy does for your legitimate football fans. And this is actually where it would help your fanatics as well. I know the players that deserve a halfway decent contract. I know who they are. How? Because I can see what they do week to week. The team may not have success, but I know they do. There are a few players getting paid a good chunk of money. They don't deserve it. And nobody realizes how bad they've actually been. But they don't deserve their money. They're actually that bad. But because you don't see what happens week to week, and you just see highlights and clips, it's different. I get to see the week-to-week stats. There's a saying that stats don't lie. They don't most of the time. 95% of the time, stats don't lie. That is an accurate statement. 5% they can. Got to look at what the game was. Example, Minshew threw for 312 yards against the Tennessee Titans when the Colts played them a few weeks back. 60 of those yards was the final drive in overtime. In regular session play, he had 252. So there's an aspect of it that is like that. That's where the stats don't tell necessarily the whole truth, It's not lying, but there's an extra aspect to it. Okay? Each week, you can tell who's putting in the effort. And this is the direction this podcast is going. I want to name a few names for coaches. Kind of going to circle the wagons here because we got a lot of rumors out there now about head coaches. We're going to focus on the head coach. We're going to focus on what could happen. We're going to throw out, put out the names out there that could be there. Here is just something about it because it's the hot topic right now. You got suspensions that are taking place. You've got the playoffs that are in a full swing fighting for those playoff spots. You've got a team like Carolina who beats Atlanta. They've got a home game against Green Bay, a road game against Jacksonville, and a home game against Tampa Bay. Why could the Panthers not end up 4-13? Now, the Bears don't want them to. The Bears would absolutely prefer that they lose. They want that number one pick. But there would be a legitimate conversation about what the Panthers could be. So let me throw a name out. Let me throw a name out for the Panthers. Big, polarizing, will protect the team because the spotlight would be on him. Rex Ryan. Yeah, you heard me right. Rex Ryan. I think there is a big push for some of the older coaches. Because look at what McCarthy has done with the Cowboys. Andy Reid with the Chiefs. You're playing against guys that know what they're doing. John Harbaugh has been the coach at the Ravens for a long time now. A long time now. Mike Tomlin is currently rumored to be let go. They feel he's lost the players of Pittsburgh. Okay. I could see him going to the Chargers. I could see him going to New Orleans. Somebody that demands a presence for a smaller, quote-unquote, smaller organization. You're looking at a time frame now when, as a fan, you can see what the players are doing now through fantasy football, through all the integrated stats that are available. But you can also see what a coach does. Does he really win the matchups? Like Brandon Staley, it was clear he should have been fired last year. And here's the thing, guys. Please don't forget this. Just because you make the playoffs does not mean you're a good coach. Brandon Staley made the playoffs. Right now, it looks like Shane Steichen will make the playoffs with the Colts. Guys, do you realize that he just suspended 2 players and nobody knows why? Shane Steichen is pulling Josh McDaniels, Joe Judge type acts, trying to promote that he's the big man on campus. The guy hasn't won because of him. The guy's won because his defensive coordinator is that dang good and has protected him. If Gus Bradley gets signed away to be a head coach, which is very possible, the Colts are going to go 4-13, 5-12 next year, even with Anthony Richardson, because Grover Stewart would not resign, Kenny Moore ain't going to be around, and Buckner, I guarantee you, would request a trade. The coaching position matters so much. Bill Cowher's in the CBS studio. I'd ask him, you want to come back and coach for 2 years? And legitimately be like, listen, I need somebody to help set a culture up around here. I need somebody to settle the storm, keep the ship upright. If you're a team like the Chargers, perfect example. Take the Chargers. Potentially $25 million plus over the salary cap. Be like, Coach, we're going to have a dead cap year. It's going to be rough. I need somebody to come in, keep the players focused, keep them on point. That's what I need you to do. 2-year contract, help me keep the boat upright, and then we'll get your replacement after this 2 years. Makes the money, head coach, gets to build something. If he wants to keep coaching, you're not going to tell him no. Rex Ryan the same way. Marvin Lewis is currently an advisor to Antonio Pierce for the Raiders. Marvin Lewis would be a great hire for any team looking to settle the culture down. Settle the building down. Accountability. Listen, Marvin Lewis was part of Thug Cincinnati. He purposely tried to take on players like Pac-Man Jones, like Vontez Burfict, wanting to make them better men. That was his goal. He wanted to build men. People respect Marvin Lewis. And his coaching, say what you want about not necessarily being able to win the playoff games, you got there. Listen, for those of you who don't know, the entire organization that works at the facilities for all these teams get a bonus just when they make the playoffs. Making the playoffs makes people money. Very few will complain if you just make the playoffs. Let's do this. We're going to go down the list. We're going to go down the list of coaches in each division. And you tell me if you think guys like Mike Zimmer, Marvin Lewis, Rex Ryan, shoot, give Brian Billick a call. Jim Caldwell, Tom Coughlin. Give them a call. But tell me if you think those guys would immediately put the team, maybe not the first place team, but definitely the second. Let's go through the divisions and see how many that could happen in. NFC West, I will say right away, this one's not a chance. You have Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Pete Carroll. Mr. Gannon down in Arizona is screwed. He is out of luck because he will always be the fourth best coach in his division. Honestly, Pete Carroll's the third best coach in the division. And because Kyle Shanahan keeps beating him, McVay's second, Shanahan's number one. But they've got three of the top, I'm going to say 7, 8 coaches in the NFL, all in one dang division. Easily 3 of the top 10 coaches. Okay? What does Pete Carroll have? Consistency. Everybody thought he was getting out of touch. Turns out Russ was just starting to decline really quickly. Russ's mantra, Russell Wilson's attitude doesn't work for when your skill level drops. You got to really start actually putting the walk behind what you're talking about. And he can't do it. Pete Carroll has got the Seahawks. With everything that's happened, the Seahawks are sitting there ready to make the playoffs. And they can. They can. Do not mistake it. They can. All right. NFC South. This is where you're going to be interesting. Todd Bowles. Dennis Allen. Arthur Smith. And whoever Carolina hires. Let me ask you something. If Rex Ryan gets hired by the Panthers, is he the number one coach in that division? If Marvin Lewis got hired by the Panthers, is he the number one coach? If Mike Zimmer got hired, is he the number one coach? See where I'm going with this? The coach can change the trajectory really quickly because you know they're better. You know they're better. You know they're going to put the better product out there. Listen, I think Arthur Smith should not be fired for Atlanta. I am one that believes he needs to be given a chance, whether they trade for a quarterback, whether they draft a quarterback by trading up, whatever it may be, Arthur Smith needs a quarterback. Post Matt Ryan needs a actual quarterback. They tried the Desmond Ridder thing, but Ridder was drafted in the 3rd round, not the 1st round. So let's just relax for a second. So it didn't work the greatest. Big deal. Big deal. Who cares? Who cares? Right now, Dennis Allen is really struggling in New Orleans. Really struggling. He needs to be fired. And they need a new coach. What if Rex Ryan and Marvin Lewis both got hired in that division? Is it going to happen? Probably not. But we're talking about setting the culture and the foundation back up for the team, keeping the ship upright while you're going through changes. Those two are men. They'll protect their teams. The players will be able to play. And that matters. All right, the NFC North is pretty stacked. I don't know where the ranking is. Dan Campbell, Kevin O'Connell, Matt LaFleur, and then the Bears. Who do the Bears hire? They never should have signed Matt Nagy, and they never should have signed Matt Eberflus. Matt Nagy, to his credit, wasn't horrible. I mean, he is the coach with the double doink. Okay, so I understand that. But if you bring in, let's say Mike Zimmer goes to Chicago. Now, I think if Jim Harbaugh were to be signed by Chicago, I don't think it's going to happen. But if Jim Harbaugh were to sign with Chicago, Jim Harbaugh would be the best coach in that division. But Dan Campbell has built a very good culture in the Lions organization. Kevin O'Connell has kept the ship upright through starting quarterback going down, running back issues, receiver going down, still there. Matt LaFleur, first year with Jordan Love, injuries on the offensive line, injuries all over the defense, still in playoff contention. Matt LaFleur is not a problem. Kevin O'Connell is not a problem. Dan Campbell is not a problem. All right, NFC East, we have Mike McCarthy, Nick Sirianni, Ron Rivera, who I believe is going to get fired, and Brian Daboll. What Brian Daboll has been able to do with the lack of quarterback talent is impressive. I don't know what they're going to do. I really don't. I don't know what they will do. But whatever it is, like the Washington Commanders, if Belichick and Josh McDaniels end up in Washington, okay, the rumors are there, and they're picking up some steam. If they both end up in Washington together, does that pairing put them first or second in the NFC East? I said pairing. Without Josh McDaniels, Bill Belichick has one of the greatest coaches, but let's be honest, he's probably not going to beat them by himself. Got to have Josh McDaniels. All right, AFC East. Sean McDermott, Mike McDaniel, Robert Saleh, and whoever the Patriots hire after they fire Bill Belichick. What if you fire Saleh? What if the Jets fire Saleh? And I know you're sitting there going, why? His defense. As a fan, watching his defense, I know it's his side of the ball. I know it's the side that he controls. But his defense just got run out of the building by Miami. What if there's two new coaches in that division? Sean McDermott, I've told you, his Achilles heel seems to be bigger games, getting the right defensive call, making the hard call when you need a stop. Mike McDaniel, I think, has limitations. He's very offensive-minded. Vic Fangio is the defense. I don't think there's much better of a pairing. I think the defense needs some help in the middle, defensive tackle and linebacker. And I think that's what he's missing because it's a lot of those intermediate routes where the Dolphins get beat. But where would a new coach rank in the AFC East? AFC North, whoever takes over the Steelers. Listen, Stefanski, the guy is Coach of the Year candidate number one as far as I'm concerned. 4 different quarterbacks with W's, like just hands down amazing. John Harbaugh is number 1. Zach Taylor, what he's done in Cincinnati. No Joe Burrow, and his team is still in the middle of the playoff race. So if you're the Steeler coach, the new Steeler coach, you've got to outdo those 3. You're already behind the 8 ball. You're not going to be better than John Harbaugh. AFC South, I don't believe anybody's getting fired. Doug Peterson, Shane Steichen, DeMeco Ryans, and then Mike Vrabel. Vrabel will not get fired. It's not happening. If they do, they're making a huge mistake. They don't want to fire Mike Vrabel. They don't. But let's just, let's say the Colts fire Steichen. See, here's the problem. Steichen and Ryans are both new. And Ryans looks more in control of his team than Steichen does. Ryans looks like the leader. Steichen has Gus Bradley and looks like he's relying on him to help him figure stuff out. You can't be the 4th best coach in your division. You just can't. AFC West, the Raiders and Chargers are open. I'm going to argue Antonio Pierce is solidly 3rd. He could be 4th only because of who the Chargers may hire. And I say may hire on purpose. May hire. There's no guarantees with any of it. I'm not going to go wild on this. But there's the reality. Now, the other aspect of it is this. If you're going to get a new coach, the coach has to be able to win. The NFC South, to me, is the most intriguing division. It could have 2. It could have 3 new coaches. I don't know. But here is the reality. The coaching hires are going to be big swings. These guys are wanting to win now. They don't want to wait around. These owners are very impatient. I will give you that. As a fan, playing fantasy football gives me the ability to see what Saleh is doing with his defense. Are they doing anything? Sacks, points allowed, 3 and outs. All that stuff is involved in scoring on defenses. All of it. I can tell you if their side of the ball is good enough. I can tell you if the running back's actually running the ball well. The Dynasty League changed my view a little bit. It gave me more information for me to be able to watch football with even a deeper appreciation for what's going on. Gotta be honest. There's a lot of teams that could easily be helped by going after a big coach. A big coach. You need somebody who's polarizing, demands attention, will protect the team while the team's trying to build. That's really what you need. And there's plenty of coaches out there that can do it. All right, guys. That is going to be it for this podcast. wanted to just kind of walk through what we could see. The coaching carousel to me for this offseason is really going to matter because we could have 9 coaches, 9 coach changes. We know we've got 4, probably 7 based off of the rumors we're hearing. We know we've got a surprise that's going to happen. So it's important, guys. Having the coach matters. I appreciate you guys stopping by. Thank you so much for listening. Have a absolutely great Thursday. And until tomorrow, have fun, enjoy the day, and we'll see you on the next one. Hawk out.